Hello and welcome to Oak Road Hatter, where once again I'm Finley Cannon, and this week I'm joined by Adam Driscoll as always. Hello Adam, how you doing?
Yeah, good mate. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's been long enough since the game, I think. And for the first time this season, we're joined by Stephen Day. How are you, Stephen?
Not too bad, thank you.
This week we're going to talk about Luton Town and our home defeat to QPR, which was not what we wanted to be talking about really. We were hoping to be going in with a into the international break with a bounce, but we're going to have to talk about it. So I guess we'll get straight into it. Um, Adam, obviously the result was not what we wanted at all. Especially when we were leading, we went 1-0 up. So we'll just talk about that first half performance initially. Um, I thought the first half was very good. We looked comfortable. We looked like we controlled possession well. What were your thoughts on how we played to start the game?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the first sort of 10 minutes was maybe a little bit nervy. I think we saw QPR having a lot of the ball, passing it around quite well, and we seemed to struggle to really kind of get a foothold in the first 10 minutes. A little bit lucky, I think, with Dembele's chance that didn't go in and was just as I sat right behind it, just past the post. So we got away with it a little bit with that chance. But really, I think when we got the goal. From then for the rest of the first half, we looked quite good. We looked pretty solid. I did turn to my dad next to me and said we look more like the old Luton. Now obviously, I've jinxed it, and we'll come on to that. But we did look a lot more like our old selves, particularly going forward. And we seemed to get a hold of midfield as well. With the two in midfield, we seemed to be able to actually get on the ball and dictate play. So it was really encouraging. From the goal for the rest of the first half, really.
And you mentioned the midfield there. QPR did line up with quite a robust midfield with Jack Colbeck and Sam Field in there. Um, were you expecting us to have the control of that midfield battle? I guess.
Um, Not necessarily. I think we've struggled with that in the first few games with the two, and we've had a conversation before about whether it needs to be a three. But I wasn't necessarily thinking it would be a struggle. It was just kind of like, can we impose ourselves in that area? And I think they did it for the first 10 minutes. And as I say, we managed to do it really from getting the goal to the halftime whistle.
And we did actually dominate possession for the whole game, but the first half we had 54% possession and 6 shots in total, but it felt like it was a much more dominant performance when we were watching it on the pitch. It certainly did for me. Stephen, what did you think of the sort of the way we controlled the ball, as Adam mentioned there?
I think when the game was played on the ground, it was we dominated and we controlled pretty well. And I think as you said, like sort of like the old Luton was back. Like we could confidently pass the ball about. Players were moving for it, making room. And we looked we looked pretty decent, especially like once that first 10 minutes spell had like been over and done with. It was played on the ground, and when QPR weren't going for the long balls, we did perform really well. It was just obviously once we come out in the second half and it gets a little bit more feisty, and the ball starts to get lumped, and I think we started to panic a little bit, and we started to lose the confidence in the shape, and um, and just sort of lose our footing in the game and lose control. And then we started hoofing the ball up, and it didn't suit us at all, really. Um, yeah, but when we had a good passage of play on the ground, it looked brilliant, to be honest with you. Even I think like Jordan Clark specifically, he looked really good on the ball until his final his final ball essentially. And yeah,
And the final ball was really what we were looking, what was what we were missing slightly, or players getting on the end of the final ball. Obviously, we did go 1-0 up on 18 minutes, which was early by our standards, and kept them out early in the game, which again was good by our standards. Obviously, it wasn't a Luton player that scored, but it was an own goal by Jimmy Dunn, who's ever so popular at Luton anyway. It was a corner that went out, and Shandon Baptiste reloaded it into the box, and it just sort of, well, if I remember rightly, McGuinness headed it towards goal, and it bounced back and hit Dunn and just went in. He couldn't really do anything about it, but it looked like it was going to be a really good performance and result from that point as well. And we were creating opportunities to score as well. Obviously, the main one that we need to talk about is that Adebayo chance where he was put through on goal, and all he needed to do was lift the ball over the keeper, but instead it went straight at the keeper. Adam, how different a story would it have been if Adebayo had put that away?
Yeah, I think it would have been 55 minutes it was, and I watched it back earlier on, and he just takes too much time. He just takes that extra second. It lets the keeper get that bit closer, which obviously makes the goal look that bit smaller. And I just think it's maybe a confidence thing as well. I think Adebayo in form hits that pretty much first time and slots it away. And I think 2-0 up, 55 minutes. I wouldn't say it puts the game to bed, but it gets us quite a long way to that. Um, and then typically, only 4 minutes later, we concede. So it was a massive opportunity, and I just think it's a confidence thing. Because as I say, you back Morris or Adebayo 9 times out of 10 to be putting that away.
And do you think there's confidence lacking across all of our attack, really, Stephen? Do you think, I would say, in the likes of Chong, Morris, Adebayo, they're all lacking that little bit of confidence?
Yeah, it's hard to sort of put a finger on or find a reason for why really, because it's not like we weren't scoring goals last season. It just we've come into this championship season. I think there's a level of low on confidence, but a level of possibly thinking that they just have a right to score, and they if they put themselves in a position, they're just gonna the ball's gonna fall to them and score, and it feels like they're not. With three good attackers, like good championship attackers on the pitch, when the ball's in the box, it feels like there's almost no one there. And Adebayo and Morris were going for it, but it just we keep losing the battles when crosses are going in, pretty much. And when the ball falls, it feels like I noticed it like multiple times on Friday night. It was just falling to a QPR player every time. And it's a bit of the rub of the green, but it's also like it just they've sort of forgot where to position themselves and forgot their striker's instinct essentially. And even like with the final chance for Joe Taylor at the end, like you'd probably say 9 times out of 10, even 10 times out of 10 in League One, League Two, he puts that in last season, and then he misses for us. Yeah, and you think with 4 good attackers, one of them's going to come up with a goal, and they haven't really in the the start of the season. So, yeah, I think it is a lack of confidence, but also just a mentality problem as well for thinking that they just have a right to actually score and not. I wouldn't say not putting enough effort in, but just lost that, as I said earlier, lost that striker's instinct.
And we'll get on to the second half chances and the second half in more detail shortly. But before we do that, be sure to like, share, and subscribe the podcast and follow us on social media. That's at Oak Road Hatter on Twitter or X, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you are listening to the audio version, please give us a rating. We really appreciate all the support, and it helps us to produce the best content for you. As I mentioned there, we'll talk about the second half where things did fall apart really and capitulated in terms of the performance and the result, which obviously, as you mentioned, Adam, started off with that Adebayo miss, and then was it 4 minutes later they were up the other end and they were scoring through Madsen, who I didn't really know anything about, I would say, until the cup game in midweek, obviously against QPR as well, which we unfortunately lost on penalties. But it was a sort of the ball was a loose ball that QPR pounced upon really, and hit us on sort of a break, and we just didn't deal with it at all. I thought McGuinness really struggled with the directness of their attack. I don't know about you.
Yeah, completely agree. You know, it's a long ball into Frey, who first half didn't really do a lot, if I'm honest. Second half was an absolute beast. And what concerns me is that we've had Morris and Adebayo as those sort of strikers for a while, so we should really be able to defend against it. I know McGuinness is new to the fold, but he's a big, strong centre half, so he has to do better. The first ball that comes into Frey, even if McGuinness is climbing over his back and commits a foul, then so be it. But to let the ball bounce, let the guy bring it down and outmuscle McGuinness, it's just an absolute disaster, and just a joke really defending wise. Even following that, he turns McGuinness. Mengi comes across as well, and we've got another two or three opportunities to deal with the situation, and we just don't. And it's almost comical. If it wasn't so infuriating, you would laugh at it. It's just such poor defending. Particularly concerning for me, considering that, as I say, we've got Adebayo and Morris that are strikers of a similar mould. We train against them every day of the week. Morris back to goal. We should be able to deal with it, and we really didn't, and it was pretty pathetic, really, to be honest.
And after that, things really did sort of fall apart for us. It was 3 minutes later when they got the second, and it was another badly dealt with ball worked into the box quickly. McGuinness again struggled to clear his lines or struggled to get onto this attacker again, and Frey put it away really well and sent the QPR fans absolutely crazy. And it is genuinely some of the best limbs I've seen in the away end in a long time, which I hate to admit with it being QPR, but it was
Yeah.
limb central in there. How well, firstly, did he take that goal, Stephen? But also, how concerning is it that we've conceded in such a short space of time from the first goal they scored, which was something we saw last season happen on a number of occasions, conceding back to back in a short space of time?
Yeah, I think it's sort of. I think as Adam was sort of saying there, like it shows what our strikers should be like. The way he took that chance, that's a proper striker's instinct, striker's like goal that, and it I think it's kind of similar in the way of where I was talking about our attackers, our defenders as well. It seems like when we're defending, we're all over the place and we don't know where to position ourselves in the box. And I was thinking, McGuinness seems like that sort of leader that's going to sort of be there when you need him in the box defensively. But it wasn't the case Friday night, and it just feels like we've forgotten how to defend as well as attack. And I think what was it? There was 3-4 of our defenders over on the left hand side of the box. If you're looking at the goal on the left hand side of the box, and 2-3 QPR players unmarked on the right hand side of the box, and you're thinking like it's almost like basic defending. Like you've got to follow your men in. You've got to stay with them. You can't let the ball drop to them in the box. And it sort of that it just shows what we should be. That's how we should be, and that's how we were last season. Even though we didn't score enough to keep us up, we were clinical, and you could sort of put those defensive mistakes sort of down to we're playing against world class players every week, but we're now playing against championship class players every week. And if they're finding that much space in our box, then there is something seriously going wrong. And I'm hoping that McGuinness will sort that out, because he does seem like the sort of leader. But at the same time, like it's really worrying the way Michael Frey bullied him, and I think that's why we fell apart was because they found something that worked, and they just took the lead. They took it and was like, okay, this is working. Frey's bullying McGuinness off the ball, or bullying him completely. If we keep putting the ball into him, we're going to cause problems. And they did. They just started doing that, and we didn't. We just couldn't respond. Yeah, that's just how ruthless we need to be, and we need to be smarter to that sort of thing as well.
I think just to add to that, I just looked at the champ table from the year we finished third. We only conceded 39 goals in 46 games, and we only scored I think 57 compared to 87 from Burnley. So we were built on the foundations of we know how to defend, and on paper, arguably, we had inferior defenders. I know we still had Burke and Bell, but when you think we're adding McGuinness and Mengi to the options that we've got, to have done 7 goals, and all of them seem so avoidable and so easy for the opposition. It's really concerning for me that we're leaking goals as we did last season, because I think we all appreciated it would be a step down in quality, but maybe the players had thought it was a far significant step down, because players are taking chances against us. So we really need to sort that out quickly, because the way we're shaping up at the moment, we're going to be double the amount of goals that we did last time in the championship.
I think the concerning thing is, and it's been for some time now, it's this change of system Edward seems to have put in. He's trying to be more expansive and attacking, but it has left us incredibly open defensively. And I think we saw that in the second half of last season in the Premier League, where teams were just getting in behind us and scoring so easily against what was a very open defence. It doesn't seem to be working, and I think confidence is on rock bottom. We have not won a game since April, and the way we've played, I can't see us. If we continue playing as we've played, I can't see us winning a game for the foreseeable future, which is worrying. But the concerning thing, as you've mentioned there, is how easy it is for teams to score against us when we were built on resolute defending. And I think something has got to change, and I think that is the system, because we have got a very, very good squad of players, but they are struggling to deal with even basic attacks from opposition sides. I just wanted to touch on a couple of players from the game who I thought did play well despite our overall poor performance. Firstly, it's Baptiste, who obviously was instrumental in getting that opening goal for us. I thought he was probably the best player on the pitch for us. First half, I think he was the best player on the pitch generally, but he just looked very composed and was playing it out well. What did you think of him, Adam? And then obviously you wanted to touch a little bit on that system a bit more.
Yeah, I do like Baptiste. I feel like he would be so much more comfortable in a 3 in midfield. I think he's showing bits of class, like the ball. I think it was him that put the ball through to Adebayo for that chance we spoke about, and that is some creativity there. But I think there's so much more to come from him as well, though. But I think he needs that other player in midfield to be able to almost give him like the free reign to be that midfield powerhouse, that kind of like box to box, and win the battle. And I think Marv coming in whenever he's back ready to start will help that massively. But I do think it needs to be Baptiste, Marv, and another, as opposed to 2 in midfield and one of them being Baptiste. That's my opinion on the midfield and the 2. As I say, I like what I've seen from him early doors, but I do feel like there's a lot more to come from him. I just wanted to touch very quickly on the playing out the back, because that was frustrating to watch the other night, and we've spoken about what it led to at Portsmouth as well. I don't know what you guys think about us playing out the back, but we don't seem to have perfected it by any means. We seem very slow in doing it. We seem to put ourselves under so much pressure, it's unreal. I think the Dembele chance came from us playing out the back. And I just want to know, really, like, if you guys agree with the question marks over it, because to me it's putting so much pressure on us, and then ultimately we end up lumping it into one of the forwards, and you think, why the hell can't a keeper do that from the start? So yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Stephen, on the whole idea of playing out the back?
I think it sort of comes back to the formation not really working, because we seem to be what I realised Friday night, what I've realised in pre-season as well, is that we're finding our players are a lot higher up the pitch, it feels like, and we've got obviously less players in the middle of the park, and I think that's sort of where we're going wrong a bit in terms of playing out the back, because we've got players that are far up the pitch, and it's all well and good having players that can play between the lines, but when you've got 3 or 4 sitting on the forward line, and you're playing out from the back, and you're going from Mengi to Baptiste, and you've got him surrounded by about 3 or 4 opposition players, and he's got to try and turn or go back or do something with it or beat the players. You're gonna run into problems because you haven't got enough bodies there. And I think something I'm just like remembering as well is like there was a few times where I think we were playing out from the back and we'd lost the ball, and Alfie Doughty or Jordan Clark were playing sweeper at the back, and I was like, why have we got a wing back sweeping up when we've got 3 central defenders on the pitch? Why have we got Jordan Clark as our deepest player between the opposition players and the goal? Like, that's something that shouldn't be happening. I think this is coming back to, again, like the sort of thinking that the opposition aren't going to be as good as what they have been, and like sort of thinking we can afford to have players far out the pitch, we can afford to take risks, and in this league you can't. So yeah, that's my thoughts with it.
Yeah, I agree with Stephen there. I think we're setting up to play out at the back, and we're doing that annoying thing that we get so frustrated by other teams doing, where the defender goes to take the goal kick, they hold on to it for ages, and then they just pass it back to the keeper.
Yeah.
Who then has to either go long or put it into a midfielder who's under immediate pressure, and we either lose the ball or have to rush it back to a defence and start all over again. And I think it's just wasting not only a lot of possession, but it's wasting a lot of time as well. There's so much time being taken to try and work out what to do with the goal kicks. I don't think Kaminski's a very good ball-playing goalkeeper, but we didn't bring him in to play the ball out, because we brought him in when we were resolute defensively. We were compact at the back with an extra man in midfield at the start. The way we started the Premier League season, as we finished the way we finished the Championship season, we were compact, but we're not compact at all anymore. And it's catching Kaminski out with the ball countless times, and I just don't think he's the sort of keeper that needs that. The other thing is, when we're playing out at the back, we're completely wasting what Morris is incredibly good at. He's so good at bringing that long ball down and controlling it and finding someone else. But because we're playing out at the back, we're playing so spread out in those forward areas that he's bringing the ball down and then immediately losing it, because they can see that they don't need to mark anyone near him because there is no one near him. So for me, the playing out the back doesn't work with the players we've got playing, and also doesn't work with the formation. I would like to see us go back to what we did a lot in the Championship, where the whole team shifted over to one side of the pitch from a goal kick. It was sent long to Morris or Adebayo, and they knocked it down to someone else nearby, and we then worked out what we were doing. We either dropped it into midfield, or we spread out again and worked our way forwards.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Absolutely agree with both of you. And one of the players you mentioned there, Morris, I think it's having a massive impact negatively on his contributions. You've just said there, him and Adebayo are strong centre forwards. Even if he's playing slightly out wide, or Adebayo is playing slightly out wide, we have to use their attributes to get ourselves up the pitch and play off of them. And that's what we did so well last season in the Prem, and also the year before. And at the moment, Morris isn't a play it down the line, he'll go and get it. He's not. He's quite quick, but he's not that quick. And I think he's one that I've not been impressed with. But I don't think it's all his fault. That's kind of my thoughts on him and how he's impacted from playing out the back.
Yeah, I just want to final touch on this. Like, I think I think we've had to change the system because I think Edwards is trying to sort of keep the front three happy. He's trying to keep Chong, Morris, and Adebayo happy, and try and fit them all in. And I don't think it's going to work. I think we're going to have to go back to that three in the middle, as we've touched on, and we're going to have to sacrifice one of them. And in my eyes, I think it would be you'd have to sacrifice one of Morris or Adebayo and play them with Chong, because I think Chong's a different kind of is a different kind of attacker to those two, where they're quite similar, and you need to have those. You need to have two of them playing with each other, but having all three of them on the pitch, it's not working. It doesn't help with playing out the back, because that's three players that are sitting forward. Whereas, as we've been saying, as Adam said, like Morris is so brilliant at bringing the ball down. He's like a if you want to do football manager terms or whatever, like a deep lying forward. Like he comes in, takes the ball, will turn or try and create something from that, and that'll be perfect for Chong to play with. But if you've got him coming in and getting muscled off the ball and all that, and there's not enough people behind him to help, it's going to leave us open, as we said. So yeah, I think my thoughts on it, like finally, is we've got to drop one of the front three and drop, and have that position go into midfield.
Just before we go to a break, I wanted to touch on one final thing from the game. And it's not something I would hope for us to talk about, but for the first time that I can remember, Edward seemed out of his depth tactically in this game. The subs came probably 10 minutes too late in the second half. I would say you could tell the crowd were getting incredibly frustrated. When the subs did eventually come on, obviously Joe Taylor came on, which is what people have been calling for. But there was almost a sarcastic cheer that went up when he came on, and it wasn't pleasant to experience. Just that frustration that was really aimed at the coaching side of things. And for me, the changes he made, I mean, he brought the correct players on, in my opinion. I think they were the players that needed to come on, but I wouldn't have taken off the players that he did take off. It was McGuinness and it was Chong, I think, that he took off.
Yeah.
I just think having Taylor, Morris, and Adebayo playing up front didn't work. There's three strikers all trying to run the same channels, and it was just everyone was getting in each other's way. And Walsh, I think, was the right change for Chong, and he was finding players, or he was trying to find players with passes, but because those three were all up front together, they were all just getting caught in each other's channels. And I just think the changes weren't the right time, and they weren't the right changes in terms of who went off. He did admit after the game, obviously, that it was his fault. But I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the tactical battle and how Edwards tried to change things.
Yeah, for me, he waited 13 minutes from when they scored. I don't know why, because it was backs to the wall, wasn't it? And you could see it straight away. The changes should have been made straight away as soon as he went behind. Why he insists on taking off Chong, I've no idea. I mean, I know he'd been booked, but he'd been booked in the first minute. He'd survived 74 minutes without getting another yellow. So another 15 or 20 would have been absolutely fine. And that's a risk you have to take. For me, I don't disagree with bringing on Walsh, but then you need Chong, in the next phase of the pitch to get the ball from Walsh and to be taking us forward. So I don't understand why we take Chong off when he's really our only flair player with a bit of creativity. I think that was the wrong call again. He did it at Preston, but Chong had been kicked up in the air 7 or 8 times, so I could probably understand that one. So that was the wrong one for me. But yeah, Joe Taylor, again, he sort of seemed to play drifted out wide, didn't he? Have a 3 really with Adebayo and Morris. Didn't work. I think he should have scored at the end. I do think he should have scored, and I think you're right. He scores that last year, doesn't he? Every time, and it just wasn't to be. Yeah, I don't know. It's just he's not getting the subs right at the right times, and they're not having the impact that really he's got right before on many occasions. And obviously, we know that Nathan used to do it quite a lot and get his subs right. It's just not having the impact that I guess he intends.
I mean, for me, I don't think taking Chong off was the wrong idea, because it seemed as if he wasn't it even like from early in the game, it just sort of seemed like his head wasn't fully in it, and he was getting the ball and he was trying to run at people, but they found him out really quickly, and he was getting tackled or pushed off the ball really easily, and I think he just lost. Well, I don't think he ever had a footing in the game really. Obviously, there were you get the sparks from him every now and again, but I think he definitely wasn't the wrong for me. It wasn't the wrong substitution, because he just wasn't in the game. And when Lee Walsh came on, he sort of almost changed the game really, because he sort of got us a little bit more back on the ball, was finding players, and yeah, and I think with trying to change it like straight after the first goal, I think I turned to my mate who was with me, and I said we need to swap McGuinness and Mengi over, because Mengi will deal with Frey easy enough. He's got the strength to deal with him. McGuinness was losing the battle every time, and I was like thinking like this could be 2-1, 3-1, or 4-1 if this carries on. I don't disagree with taking McGuinness off, but I think it should have really just been just a little swap. And I'm not, we're not football managers and all that, so maybe it's not as easy as just doing that. But it just seemed like it was so obvious that McGuinness was losing that battle every time, and rather than take him out of the game completely, let Mengi deal with Frey and sort of calm that down a bit and sort of stop them from playing that game, and sort of keep McGuinness on to sort of keep his match fitness up and keep him in, playing our system and give him more experience for us as well. And yeah, I don't really think that Edwards got it like completely wrong altogether, but there is things have got to change. And yeah, I'm not in the camp, I guess, of like it was a horrible tactical performance, because we weren't that bad. I think it was more just QPR found weaknesses and exploited them.
And do you think this is just finally? Do you think we are just the confidence that we're lacking, and just the complete? I think I would say we have got a habit now of capitulating after we concede once. That is a confidence thing. I'm sure do you both feel the same way, or is it the system isn't working?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a habit of losing, aren't we? It doesn't matter if you look at last season and go, well, we were up against it every week, and it was a different acceptance, let's say, of losing most weeks. We have a team of players that have stayed, majority of, and we're in a habit of losing. So we have to be able to sort that out. I think tactically, yeah, there's obviously a lot of conversation about what we need to change, and I'm certainly a lot more open to changing the formation now going forward. But I think it's a mixture. It's confidence. It's players that have been losing week in week out for quite a long time, and it's also a little bit tactical as well.
We're going to go to a break there, but when we get back, we'll just be touching a little bit more, a little bit on the transfer window, and also we'll just briefly talk about a young star for Luton who really has made a name for himself in the opening weeks. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter, where I'm still joined by Adam Driscoll and Stephen Day. We're back, and we're going to talk about. We're going to go on to obviously the transfer window concluding, but before we go on to that, I just wanted to talk about the midweek game briefly. Obviously, we lost on penalties to QPR as well, obviously away from home, with a sort of rotated squad, but some resemblance of the players that did start in the league. But the one player I wanted to talk about more than anyone was Zack Nelson. We have seen him more at the start of the season. Obviously, he started against Burnley, but against QPR, he was probably the standout player, and he scored an absolute screamer. And I think that is the only way to describe it. It's his first goal in senior football. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on him as a player. Adam, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I like what I've seen from him so far. I loved his goal because it's all about technique. It's not like you see some goals where someone smashes it in the top corner and you think, well, there's a lot of luck about that. But the way he controlled it and the general technique was brilliant. So it was really good to see that, and from a homegrown player. I can't claim to have seen like too much of the game in itself midweek to know the impact that he's had. I mean, Edwards and co clearly rate him because they're bringing him on regularly ahead of some what you might call senior players. But yeah, I think sometimes it's about getting him in the environment, and he'll massively benefit from that as well. But there's certainly a lot of promise for him, and someone that I think we could see quite a few times off the bench this season, and really just kind of getting equipped with the level.
And how pleasing is it? Obviously, fans love to see sort of homegrown players come through, but how pleasing is it to see the likes of Zack Nelson and Joe Johnson coming through into the team, Stephen?
Yeah, I think we've gone quite a few years since we've had like a proper good like youth player come through the ranks, and also we've had Joe Johnson like the last year or so. But before that, I can't really think of many players that had come into the first team squad and stayed in and around the first team squad for a while. So it's nice to have that, and it's almost with that Nelson this season. It's almost like a new signing. Like he's been involved in. It was involved in pre-season. He was involved in a few games last season, but I don't think it was enough to really fully see what he was about. But this season it's almost like a new signing for the midfield because he looks like he's pretty much one of the only positives we can take from the last month or so. And he's got confidence. He's like one of the only players on the pitch that seems to have confidence. He's not scared of anyone or anything. He's as we've seen with the goal as well. He's not lacking in confidence. And he looks like the sort of player that we need in the midfield, like to sort of create things. He's obviously very raw, and it's going to be hard for him to properly like cement himself in the first team every week. But going back to the tactics and all that, if we change to a midfield three, you'd want him to be the one spearheading the midfield, and so yeah, it's really nice to see him. And I hope Joe Johnson gets more minutes as well, because I think it does feel like we're still lacking in the wing back department. It was a bit disappointing not to bring anyone in that department fully, and so yeah, I'm hoping to see more of him this season as well.
And you mentioned there that the transfer window briefly, the Zack Nelson is a bit like a new signing. And that's probably a good thing because we didn't see that many arrivals come in, but someone like Zack Nelson coming through shows, and the lack of players that were brought in shows the confidence and the faith Edwards has got in Nelson. I just wanted to touch on the window because obviously it's now shut, and there was a lot of concern over the last couple of days of the window and keeping hold of players. In particular, Thomas Kaminski, but mainly Mengi, who was linked with all sorts of locations. He was linked with France, with Lens. He was linked with Wolves, and he was in particular linked with Torino, which was probably the most unusual place for him to be linked with because it's just such a change from the Premier League. But in the end, he stayed with us. And how key do you think that is for us, Adam, that we've kept hold of Mengi?
I think it is big. I mean, he's. I know we're struggling at the moment in defence, and maybe he's not on his best form. But there's no doubt he's a quality player, and we've seen that for the most part last season. So, to keep him is big. He's still young. I think people forget he's 21 or something. And I think we sometimes probably expect too much from him in terms of a leadership capability. I'm sure he's got it, but he's still 21. He's still a kid. And we have more senior players that should be stepping up. But yeah, I'm really pleased to keep him. There was talk about a deal where he expires with us next summer, so we had to extend it, and then we'd do a loan with an obligation. And the fees being talked about were pathetic, really, in terms of how you would value Mengi right now. So I'm very, very pleased we didn't see anything happen, because I think there'd have been a lot of unhappy fans in terms of the quoted fee. But yeah, someone to try and keep hold of, hopefully beyond January and beyond next summer, and really build your team around as well.
And Stephen, if you were obviously Mengi probably starts for everyone. I think in terms of in their Luton lineup, who would you play around him, and where would you have him in that defence?
I think, bar what I was saying earlier with having to deal with Michael Frey, I'd say is right on the right hand side of the back three was is the best position for him, really, because I think with McGuinness you've got to have him in the centre of it, because he's not the most mobile person, but he's going to be there to sort out the long balls, hopefully, if he's learning his lesson. I think on the right hand side of McGuinness, and probably with Bell on the left hand side, it's probably the best that we've got for the back three, really. I think maybe if we're needing a little bit more options with going forward, and with how Reece Burt likes to play, then like maybe later in the game you take McGuinness off or Bell off, and you move Reece Burt to right centre back, because that seems to be his best position, and you want him darting down the wing or through the middle and getting into the box, because it's hilarious watching him do that, but it somehow works as well. Yeah.
And the one player I think that has consistently impressed this season, and he is another young defender and a new arrival, and that's Reuell Walters. I thought alongside Baptiste, he was probably our standout player, and he has been for the opening few games for us. Just how impressed have you been with the addition of him and his start, Adam?
Yeah, he's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I've got a lot of thoughts on the transfer window and free agents, but I know we're gonna cover that separately another time. But the one player for me that's been an absolute gem of a find is Walters. He looks, I mean, he's 19, but he looks physically like he's mid-20s. He looks like he's played at the level, or in first team football, let's say. It looks like he's had 50, 60 appearances. And that a lot of that will come from training with the Arsenal first team, which by all accounts I think he's done for quite a while. I wouldn't say it would come from his Premier League 2 appearances. But he's been in a great environment with some quality players, learning for some very good defenders. He looks absolutely class, and to me, I think he's just got to be in the team. He's got to be on the team sheet, whether that's in a four at the back as a right back, or whether it's on the right side of a back of three centre halves. He's showing himself to be undroppable at the moment.
And that is, I mean, being 19 years old, how much of a compliment is it that he is being entrusted with so much responsibility already, Stephen?
I mean, my take on him is that I don't exactly agree that he's looked almost exceptional, really. He seems like he's still quite raw. There's not been a lot of first-team football for him, and I think it shows. I think like his defensive positioning, and like Friday night and the other games as well. Like it does seem like he's very easy to sort of push off the ball, and he sort of doesn't really put himself in for tackles properly. And it's definitely exciting, and it's a really good signing. But for me, it's almost a little bit worrying that we've got someone so raw that it's going to be probably starting every game. Hopefully he learns quick. But yeah, my take on it is that he's not. If we had a more experienced right wing back, I'd say they would start over him. Yeah, and seeing him playing like as a sort of a backup like centre back, it's to me that is worrying because he's not got the defensive positioning and nous for it really. So yeah, for me, it's not as my evaluation of him is not as good as probably a lot of other people's as well. I'm a little bit critical, but yeah.
And we'd love to know your thoughts if you're listening or watching on Reuell Walters. So be sure to let us know either on social media, so that's on X or Twitter, Instagram or Facebook, at Oak Road Hatter, or in the comments on YouTube. So let us know what you think about Reuell Walters' start to the season and where we can best utilise him. That is all from us from this evening, and it's the international break now, but as Adam briefly touched on, we'll be back to discuss the transfer window in more depth, which I'm sure everyone's got opinions on our business. But for now, thank you from me, Finley, from Adam and from Stephen. Thank you for listening and enjoy the international break, which has come at a good time, I think.